Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. The date today is September the 12th, 2017, and today we're talking about Star Wars. That's right. And the news broke this morning that J.J. Abrams himself is coming back to co-write and direct Star Wars Episode 9. I, for one, am really excited. I like J.J. Abrams. I thought what he did with The Force Awakens was great. I didn't think it was a perfect movie, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think I gave it in the end like an 8 out of 10 or something like that. There were things as a filmmaker that I would have done a bit differently, things I wanted him to draw out, things I wanted him to compartmentalize, just certain things I would have done differently. But as a whole, I thought it was a great return to form. I thought it was a great Star Wars movie, and it's exactly what we needed. Now, I know I don't share that same opinion with everybody. There are some Star Wars hardcore fans out there that thought it was the worst movie of all time, and of course, you can't take those people seriously. I mean, if you look at The Force Awakens and you honestly think it's the worst movie in motion picture history, then you obviously haven't watched very many movies. You got to get out of your mom's basement and get dressed and shave or something. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So, but I understand that I'm in a silent. I think I might be in a silent majority. I think the majority of people really did enjoy The Force Awakens for what it was, and I think even Star Wars fans, real hardcore Star Wars fans, can look at The Force Awakens and say, you know what, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, I think you should have done this, but good job. Like, I mean, I mean, compared to where we came from The Phantom Menace in 99 and Attack of the Clones in 2002 and Revenge of the Sith in 2005, I mean, this was the first Star Wars feeling movie in like 30 something years. So I'm excited that he's coming back because I think he did a solid job on The Force Awakens. Now, again, for those of you who don't know, who are new to my channel, I'm a professional voiceover actor, an independent filmmaker. I work in the industry, yada, yada, yada. So when I watch The Force Awakens, there's things that I'm coming at from a different sort of perspective. You have to understand cinematic language. You have to understand a bit of mythology, history, symbolism. You have to understand why The Force Awakens was the way it was. And when you understand that and you can compartmentalize those thoughts and you can sort of start to see the forest through the trees, so to speak, you can start to maybe have a different perspective on The Force Awakens and a different appreciation for The Force Awakens and the reason why it was executed in the ways that it was. Now, by no means is it a perfect movie. I didn't say that. I didn't think it was, the most incredible thing of all time. Oh my God, it's the most amazing movie I've ever seen in my life. No, it's not the most amazing movie I've ever seen in my life. And no, I don't think that J.J. Abrams is the most amazing director of all time or the most amazing writer of all time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that The Force Awakens did exactly what it needed to do. And I think it's a solid Star Wars movie. I think it's all right. Anyways, a couple years ago when I was talking all about this, I decided to write my thoughts down, and I made a post about 2 years ago. I made quite a few of them defending The Force Awakens, that it's nothing but a rehash and a remake of A New Hope. I mean, that's a blanket statement. When you go, well, it just fucking sucks. It's nothing but a rehash of A New Hope. Well, tell me why. Well, it's got a desert, and you put a thing in a droid. That's the same. You put a thing in a droid. That's the same. And it's always surface level argument. So I decided to really get into detail and basically shut everybody the fuck up, at least try to. And if this doesn't give anybody if this doesn't give people some different perspective to understand what's going on, then I don't know what will. So what I did was I wrote it all down and I read it for the camera. But that was a couple of years ago. I didn't have as many subscribers then. I wasn't posting as much then. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do that again. I'm going to read for you what I wrote. I wrote this, okay? Not anybody else. I wrote this based on my experience within the industry, my understanding of history, symbolism, mythology, and I put this up for you so you can have a better perspective on why maybe The Force Awakens is the way it is. Because you have to understand the Star Wars universe as a whole. Everything you saw in The Force Awakens, you might not agree with it, but it wasn't because J.J. Abrams is incompetent and just a piece of shit, okay? Everything is a carefully calculated creative choice and deliberately made. You may not agree with it, but it wasn't like, oh, what the fuck, that doesn't make any sense. Except for the end of the movie, when Finn, Rey, and Chewie return home from Starkiller Base, and Chewie just sort of walks past Leia and doesn't even acknowledge her. Even J.J. Abrams is on record as saying, yeah, I fucked up there. That was, Han Solo just died. Like, there should have been some sort of embrace or acknowledgement. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's a little kind of... But outside of that, everything you see is a calculated creative choice. So anyway, so I wanted to read this to you so you guys have a better understanding of where I'm coming from and why I am excited that J.J. Abrams is coming back. Because I think J.J. Abrams is a solid filmmaker. I think he's a good director. I think he tells good stories. I think he's good with characters. I think his films are fun and exciting and have a great energy to them, a great pace to them. And I'm really excited to see him direct Episode 9. It makes logical sense. Look, I would have been happy if Rian Johnson had directed Episode 9 as well. That would have made sense, of course, just coming off of Episode 8. For him to go into Episode 9 is sort of makes the most sense. It's a natural transition for him. But when you helm a project like Star Wars, when you are taking on arguably one of the biggest projects in motion picture history, when you're talking about the Star Wars universe, that is not only a physical daunting task when you write, when you're the writer and director, but it's also emotionally and mentally exhausting as well. The dude needs a break. The guy needs a break. So he's probably like, hey, listen, and him and JJ were working so close together on The Force Awakens as well, because Ryan was watching what JJ was doing. So he's going to take that and kind of makes, okay, I'm going to do this. And now JJ, of course, I'm sure as an executive producer on The Last Jedi, he's still very involved in all of the productions. He's been watching sort of what Ryan's been doing, having conversations with Ryan, and he's going to take that and complete the trilogy. So I'm really excited about it. But here's why, okay? Here's ultimately my understanding of why The Force Awakens was the way it was, what I think about JJ and the Star Wars universe as a whole, okay? Here we go. Every argument, and this is written by me, okay? I'm not reading somebody else's thoughts. These are my thoughts. Every argument I see from people complaining about The Force Awakens being nothing but a beat-for-beat remake, rehash, and rip-off of A New Hope has everything to do with parallels and not the underlining plot and story narrative that lies beneath those parallels. The arguments are nothing more than surface-level arguments, for the most part. This is where the average moviegoer who doesn't understand symbolism, comparative mythology, and narratology, and what the Star Wars universe and journey has always been about, loses their shit because it's not handed to them on a silver platter. The Force Awakens, whether you liked it or not, was a carefully constructed, crafted, and deliberate execution of the monomyth, the hero's journey, paralleling A New Hope in a deliberate and precise execution as to bring the Star Wars universe back to its feet from the depths of the critical disaster of the Star Wars prequels, while still telling a different plot narrative. It has been documented in countless articles and interviews that Disney, J.J. Abrams, Lucasfilm, Lawrence Kasdan, Kathleen Kennedy, and company told the story with the parallels they did because they had to go back to the roots of the original Star Wars trilogy. Mark Hamill himself, I think that's even his Twitter handle, Hamill himself. Anyway, Mark Hamill himself said it best in an interview for the Comic-Con behind the scenes video for The Force Awakens. You remember that one, when he said, "You've been here before, but you don't know this story. Everything's changed, but nothing's changed." The Force Awakens is not about spaceships, Death Stars, although I do agree they could have created something a little less Death Star-ish looking for Starkiller Base, or plans being hidden in droids. It once again uses the monomyth, the hero's journey, which was a concept introduced by the great mythologist and writer Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. George Lucas was a big fan of Joseph Campbell and has been quoted and documented that this concept was the driving force and blueprint and inspiration for the original Star Wars film A New Hope and the overall story arc of Luke Skywalker. This fundamental concept was introduced back into the Star Wars series with TFA, The Force Awakens, with drawing parallels to A New Hope in order to reset the universe because the Star Wars prequels are some of the most hated films in motion picture history. The story of Star Wars is one of the most definitive and classic renditions of this concept. So much so that in the late 70s, Luke Skywalker from A New Hope appeared on the cover of newly printed editions of The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I bet you didn't know that. Many who argue against my thoughts will often point to a quote by J.J. Abrams himself about the reaction people have to The Force Awakens. This is the quote in its entirety. It was obviously a wildly intentional thing that we go backwards in some ways to go forwards in the important ways. Ultimately, the structure of Star Wars itself is as classic and tried and true as you can get. The story of history repeating itself was, I believe, an obvious and intentional thing. And the structure of meeting a character who comes from a nowhere desert and discovers that she has a power within her where the bad guys have a weapon that is destructive but that ends up being destroyed, those simple tenets are by far the least important aspects of this movie, and they provide bones that were well proven long before they were used in Star Wars. J.J. Abrams. Many, however, will only refer to this part of the quote when they're somehow trying to use it as evidence that J.J. Abrams doesn't know what the fuck he's doing and he's incompetent and he's just a piece of shit. The story of history repeating itself was, I believe, an obvious and intentional thing, and the structure of meeting a character who comes from a nowhere desert and discovers that she has a power within her where the bad guys have a weapon that is destructive but that ends up being destroyed. They use that part of the quote as evidence that J.J. Abrams himself was actually admitting that The Force Awakens was nothing more than a complete rehash and beat-for-beat remake of A New Hope. However, this part, those simple tenets are by far the least important aspects of this movie, and they provide bones that were well proven long before they were used in Star Wars, is always left from their rants and arguments for some strange fucking reason. I don't know. This part is fundamental. J.J. Abrams finishes his quote with this very important statement because he understands that the tenets, which is a principle or a belief, especially one of the main principles of a religion or philosophy, are not integral to the overall underlining narrative that is happening with the characters on screen that these parallels surround. Look, he's coming at this from a mythological and narratological perspective. The underlying motivations of the characters in The Force Awakens are different from A New Hope, and their journey is also incomplete. You can't have Star Wars without the hero's journey. You can't talk about Star Wars on a deep narrative perspective without talking about it. Without the hero's journey, Star Wars would simply not exist. Why? Because that is what Star Wars is about. Here's another important part that people have to keep in mind. You have only seen one act out of a 3-act play. You have seen 2 hours out of a 6-hour movie. I can guarantee you that once all films are complete, you will have a different feeling with The Force Awakens. You will have a different feeling about The Force Awakens because you will have the perspective of seeing the story as a whole and not merely as a one-off. Things that don't make sense or add up in The Force Awakens right now will come to have great significance for you when you are able to see the story as a whole, for which you have no perspective on right now. Look, there is no doubt that Episode 8, The Last Jedi, will mirror The Empire Strikes Back in some sort of way. Why? Because of the themes. The second act in a 3-act system is always the darkest for our protagonists. The good guys are not going to win. Will Episode 8, The Last Jedi, parallel The Empire Strikes Back as much as The Force Awakens did with A New Hope? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not. Now that the universe has been reset, straying away from too many familiar parallels can be done, but the overall tone and themes will be very similar to The Empire Strikes Back. Look, a perfect example of this you need to wait to see the perspective is in A New Hope when Obi-Wan Kenobi gives Luke Skywalker his father's lightsaber for the very first time, right in Obi-Wan's little home there. Now that you've seen the Star Wars prequels and everything that lightsaber has been through, it gives that scene in A New Hope a whole new sense of awe and wonder. You are not merely looking at some dude's lightsaber, you now have the perspective, regardless of what you thought of the Star Wars prequels, of the true significance and story that surrounds that lightsaber. That lightsaber is the lightsaber that fought Obi-Wan amongst the fire and lava on Mustafar. This significance was not possible when seeing A New Hope in 1977 or any time before 2005, essentially. Or at least 2002, because I think he did have the lightsaber in 2002. It wasn't possible then. It was the exact same and even more so emotion that you felt when you saw Rey discover the lightsaber in the basement of the castle in The Force Awakens. That same sense of, fuck, that's Luke's lightsaber. That's it. Is felt inside of you because of the history and symbolic significance it has in relation to all of the films. That sense of, oh my God, would not be possible if you did not have the whole story arc of the previous films. This new trilogy story arc has just begun. We must be patient. The Force Awakens uses parallels or tenets that are what the Star Wars universe is all about to reset the franchise. But in no way is the underlying plot narrative the exact same as A New Hope. It's just not. So what is The Force Awakens really about? The Force Awakens is about the journey of Rey, which is mirroring the hero's journey as explained a few moments ago, and the conflict with a three-dimensional villain. Finn, our rogue stormtrooper, is interesting, but his story was minimal in comparison. I have no doubt we'll get to know more of him, and even Poe, in The Last Jedi. Their character development will be fleshed out more, because remember, this is a 3-act play. As we go along, the whole story plot, along with our characters, will become more fleshed out and rich. Kylo Ren is a brilliantly crafted and written character. His training is incomplete. He struggles with the light and the dark side of the Force, and he is unstable with his emotions. He's everything Anakin Skywalker should have been in the Star Wars prequels, including the acting. When Supreme Leader Snoke said, "Even you have never faced such a test," he is referring to the murder of Ren's father. Snoke knew Kylo Ren was conflicted with the dark and the light side of the Force. Snoke knew that Ren had to kill his own father in order for Ren to be one step closer to finalizing the transition to the dark side. Kylo Ren's father, Han Solo, was a weakness for him, a pull to the light side. Kylo Ren needed to eliminate this weakness as it was holding him back from accomplishing his ultimate goal. The symbolism on how this scene was shot was truly deep. Starkiller Base sucking the light from the sun. The entire scene falling dark with only the glow of the red light. Han dying and falling into the white light. Everything about this scene is steeped in deep symbolism, to which, if you knew anything about, makes the scene feel fulfilled and complete. This was not simply a bad guy killing a good guy. Harrison Ford was not playing an Obi-Wan type. He was playing Han Solo. Han Solo did not die because J.J. Abrams wanted him dead. Han Solo did not die because Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die at the end of Return of the Jedi, and this was somehow his escape from doing any further movies. No, Han Solo died to fit the story arc of this brilliantly created three-dimensional villain in training. You need to understand this, not just as a fan of the films presented in the one-dimensional nature of the Disney marketing machine, but as a real Star Wars fan who understands the deep mythology and symbolism of what the Star Wars films and universe are truly about. You need to read between the lines. Remember when Kylo Ren said, "I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Can you help me?" Kylo Ren didn't mean, "I don't know if I have the strength to come with you, Father. I'd much rather be at home with you, chilling with Mom and watching some TV and playing in the garden, but can you help me, please? Because this is really tough." Although Kylo Ren was struggling and conflicted, yes, he meant that as to say, "I don't know if I have the strength to kill you." After he stabs his father, what does Kylo Ren say? "Thank you." This was his sacrifice. And we just witnessed an incredible moment in a character's story arc. Kylo Ren sacrificed his own father to be one step closer to his ultimate goal of being like his grandfather Darth Vader, right? When people throw together arguments and say things like, "Oh, in A New Hope, you had an old man killed by the main villain. And then in The Force Awakens, you had an old man killed by the main villain. See? Rip off, just the same, nothing new there." As part of their evidence of a beat-for-beat rehash, but there's no mention of the underlying plot narrative at play between these characters, you lose all respect and credibility and become fucking noise to me. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Look, reading between the lines is not a new concept for The Force Awakens. It also had to be done with the original trilogy as well. Take The Empire Strikes Back, for example, right? Arguably the greatest of all of the Star Wars films. And let's take the scene with Luke on Dagobah, with Yoda. Do you remember seeing a lot of slithering snakes kind of making an appearance on screen from time to time? Do you know what the symbolism of snakes are and what they mean? Or do you just assume they're there because, after all, it's a creepy and swampy place and they're probably just there because snakes are creepy, right? Yeah, on surface level, that's probably what you would walk away thinking. Snakes, believe it or not, are one of the oldest mythological symbols. Snakes have been associated with some of the oldest rituals known to humans and represent a dual expression of good and evil in addition to knowledge. And where does Luke see, or better yet, where do you see the most snakes? When he visits the cave. When we see the snakes in Yoda's little home, this is a representation of wisdom and knowledge because of Yoda. And when we see a lot of snakes when Luke is entering the cave, where he fights the representation of evil, Darth Vader, this represents the duality of good and evil. Guys, the Star Wars trilogy is steeped with this kind of underlining symbolism. It will be present in this new trilogy too. That scene with Kylo Ren and Han Solo is only one small example of it and the overall theme of the Star Wars universe. The Force Awakens is only like A New Hope in themes and parallels, which is expected. It's clear it was an homage to the original film, but if you're smart enough, intelligent enough, and wise enough, and you know your history and symbolism, you'll see that The Force Awakens is actually very different from A New Hope. The Force Awakens is the first act of a brand new trilogy, and it's very exciting. It's the first act of a brand new story. The common parallels between The Force Awakens and A New Hope are not the underlining story narrative for which you have only seen part of. So please, relax. Anyways, folks, that's what I had written, and that's what I wanted to get across, and that's why I'm excited for J.J. Abrams directing Episode 9, because when you understand mythology, symbolism, history, cinematic language, and you look at The Force Awakens from a different perspective, or from the perspective that I looked at it from, I'm excited. I'm excited because I think he's a good director. I think he understands the Star Wars universe, and I think he can bring this baby home. And I think we will be satisfied. There's always going to be people that are going to go, "Oh, fucking sucks, man. Fucking JJ, Jar Jar Abrams, just joking Abrams." But unless you're going to give me a rebuttal on this level, a lot of the surface level arguments that you say, they don't hold any weight. This is why I'm excited for J.J. Abrams, because I believe what he did with The Force Awakens, he understands it. He's working very close with Rian Johnson. Now, I mean, they're going to be talking. Rian Johnson will probably even be on set a couple of the days, right? When they start to do Episode 9. He's going to be working very close with Rian Johnson and taking what Rian Johnson did and completing the arc. I'm excited, man. JJ, it's great to have you back. Anyways, folks, my name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Are you excited? Are you one of those people that's just going to give me a thumb down and they go, "Fucking JJ, fucking JJ"? Comment below and let me know your thoughts, folks. My name's Dave McRae. I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.